Hello, everyone. My name is Hilda Rodriguez Guzman. I am a founding parent of local charter schools here in Los Angeles. Since 1994, I've been a charter school parent, and at the beginning, it was a beautiful thing, like Karen said. But as soon as I think the school system started noticing that they had the power to do whatever with the money and nobody was questioning them, then I became that parent that they continually tell me via email by the CEO, I have a choice. I have a choice to go anywhere else. So my response to him and my response to anyone else that questions me, because even LAUSD, the Charter School Division, has questioned me and told me if I don't like it, I have a choice. And my choice is to hold them accountable. I founded those schools in 1994 under the premise that they were going to provide my community in South LA a quality public education, and I'm going to hold them accountable every step of the way. With the Brown Act, I filed two uniform complaints in 2015 regarding funds, the categorical dollars. To this day, there's still no resolution. I just got an email and I appealed the case, and I'm still waiting for more than 3 or 4 or 5 years. We have no idea how the money is being spent. No idea. And the Charter Schools Division right there plainly wrote it in their oversight plan. We're monitoring. Well, hello, how long are you going to monitor? How long is something going to be done to resolve these issues? Brown Act violations. Contact the district attorney too in the charter school oversight. Oh, we recommend that you do this and we recommend that you do that. Where is the level of transparency? And it's like the gentleman said, I missed his name. A lot of parents do not know. A lot of community do not know that we have these rights. They don't understand what charter schools are, and it's purposely done that way. Right. So you don't understand, so you don't exercise your right to demand the information in order to get your children educated. And I work at the school, so I see what happens at the level of discrimination. I just had to file an assessment for a child. 4 freaking years this child has been retained. 4 years. This child is in the 4th or 5th grade, reading at a 1st grade level. And I know because it happened to me, it happened to my child. I had been bamboozled. My child was forced out of the system because of my advocacy. Accused me of restraining orders and threats and crazy things of that nature, but I won't give up. I won't give up because this is my community. And if we give up on education, if we give up on public education, we are doomed.
Correct.
We are doomed, and we cannot sit idle. And so no matter what happens to me, my child's gonna be taken care of, but my community is too. And I don't care if I stand alone and nobody's standing next to me. I'm not gonna shut up. And no matter what anybody says or accuses me of, it's going to be democratic, and I'm going to find out, and I'm going to follow the money. And that's where I'm going to do.
My name is Juni Versailles, and I'm the chairperson for the Unjustly Housed Teachers Committee. And I just want to make it real short. I want to reach out and connect with all of you. I'm a teacher, 2-minute walk down the street here. I was taken out December 2015, put in teacher jail. And the thing is that I just found out that my classroom is now a charter classroom. And the whole wing and my colleagues are moved out. I guess this is the 2nd month of school. So they're told them to get out of their classrooms so that the charters could move into those classrooms. And it's weird because I had my faculty meetings here, and I'm just down the street. But if anyone knows that school down the street, I'll just say it's crappy. Subs don't want to go there. Discipline's bad. I had 3 principals in the last 5 years. The 4th year, there was no principal. So no one wants to go to that school, so I'm just thinking that I'm connecting the dots. If they have crappy schools, the charters to move in. And I just want to go ahead and connect with you all later on. Thank you.
I'm Karen Wolf. I'm a parent in Los Angeles. Well, it's been very surprising to me that SEIU has not taken a strong stand against charter schools because many of their members are parents in our public schools in LAUSD. And I was at a school board meeting in 2013 when there were people lined up around the block when John Daisy was under fire, and some of the parents there who were there to try to push Daisy out were shocked to see their own union, SEIU, there to support Daisy. And one of them turned to me and said, "How did this happen? They didn't ask me. They didn't ask their members. What is this about?" And I certainly didn't have the answers.
Garcia, what happened in the Garcia campaign that they ended up supporting Garcia?
They've always supported Garcia. They've always supported her. It makes no sense to me.
Garcia.
She stands for privatizing public education. She's the leader.
And now she's the president of the board. Voted for by Rep. Rodriguez, who is a crook, and he votes for her. Well, why would the SEIU 99 support a candidate who is for charter schools where there are no unionized service workers in charter schools?
Well, that's coming from a labor perspective. That's a very, very good question. It is baffling to me. It's completely baffling to me how they justify with their mission, how they justify their position on charter schools. I mean, there's just no connection whatsoever. They completely conflict with each other.
Well, they argue that she was in favor of $15 an hour.
So was everybody. Who wasn't? You have to go to Mississippi to find somebody who was against that. In Chicago, SEIU is with the public schools. And I think that one of the... Oh, wait. I might be confused. I might be confused about that. Yeah. In Chicago, the workers who do the work that the SEIU workers do here are part of the teachers union.
Because the idea was to draw parents and teachers and get them closer together. And we know that starts small, and we know that the charterites they are very clever, the charterites, the foundations, the corporate charters, the investors, and the cockroach charters. They work together. They are a movement now. They are a reactionary movement. They are a profiteers movement, but they are a movement. They're a social movement. And that's why one of the reasons that they can run roughshod over the parents, the teachers, and get away with what they're getting away with. And they're getting away with a lot. It's, what is it? Well, it's almost $5 billion in California now? Is it that high a year that's going over to charter schools? And 550 million of that comes from LAUSD. This is tax money. This is your money. And most people don't even see this because the media are bought and paid for by the same corporations that fund and organize in with the charters. That's why you never hear about this. And like today, we contacted the media. Did they show up? No, but if you had 2 or 3 charterites with nice fat bank accounts and stocks and everything else making profits off of public money, and they called the media would be at their beck and call. So we know now from experience that we got to link parents, we have to link teachers, and we got to get them together, but we have to have tactics. And those tactics have to include active work to organize together in public actions. Now, the idea of nailing this guy, Rep. Rodriguez, we're not pre-scientific. We didn't know. We knew about the corruption in the charters, and we have been reporting that not only is Ref. Rodriguez a crook, but every one of those board members takes money from charter schools. And in the last race, the last board race, this is where your democracy went, the so-called democracy. The two charterites that got elected, Melvoin and Gonaz, they had $10 million spent for 2 school board seats downtown. So you can't say that those are independent politicians serving the American people. They are puppets of charter schools, and so are the rest of that board in one way or the other. The only difference between those two and the rest is their price that they ask from big business. So we know that one of the things, and we know this historically, that when people have spoken to this today, there's been some discussion about history. And that is important, because history has lessons. And the lessons are that we need, to get social change, you have to have people organized, you have to build a movement, you have to have demands. And you can't sow illusions. So we don't think that we should go begging to puppets on the school board. We think we should expose them and expose what they are, and not sow any illusions among people that they are going to listen to us. Have any of you recently seen those board meetings? Have you watched them? That guy Vladovic and a couple of the others, that Monica Garcia that sits there snickering at dissidents when they go up to the microphone. But Vladovic, he's ready to, he's ready to tell them to stick it up there. You know what? He actually got up at the last board meeting and said, yeah, we're going to do it. We're going to do these things because we can, and we'll do what we want. In other words, he doesn't care what you say. He thinks Ref, Monica, and the rest of them, they do what they want. And what they want is to get money from charter school investors and corporations, which they do. Now we're going to blow their cover by going out October 3rd to the next board meeting. And one of the reasons we had you sign in was getting the emails. Was we're gonna send you a notice. We don't know the exact time it's going to start, but we plan to have a picket down there. We're going to picket that place. Not to beg them. We're not interested in begging them or letting them, and letting them put another one over on us. We're going to go down there and expose them, and we're going to demand that Ref and even Monica and Melvoin and all of these charterites, Gonaz and the other 2 phonies, that they should all resign. They're crooks, and they need to be exposed and kicked off. And by doing that, one of the things we thought, well, wouldn't that be part of building a social movement that people need to get consciousness and fight back? Because you can't, now typically, there was some good comment, critical comment here before about the role of the unions. I'm a retiree. I went to the last Central Area Union meeting on Wednesday. And they tried to there was a handful of people there that wanted a motion passed to get the union to activate and organize a protest to demand that Ref and these crooks be thrown off the board. You want to know what happened to their motion? It was defeated in the so-called union. Okay? They're very proud of themselves. That's really being a union and standing up for labor, isn't it? To let these crooks run the show. But let me say, I'm almost done. But there is a material basis for all this. UTLA, till it was exposed 2.5 years ago, did you know that they had 2 of their staff that we know of? Ex-President John Perez and another staffer, Mike Bennett, not only are on the UTLA's payroll drawing union dues money from the union members, they're on a charter board at Montague Avenue Elementary School. What kind of crap is this? This is not opposing charter schools. This is flopping in bed with them. And all that means, you know, these people have to be nailed. And the people that nailed them are not going to go unpunished either. I'm banned from the building now. You know, even though 22 years, you don't exist paying them dues. You don't exist anymore. Why? What's your crime? Exposing these political whores. And no offense, I don't want to be nailed for sexism. I said political whores.
Every one of you brought a wealth of knowledge, understanding, personal endeavor, and that tells me, informs me that you care deeply, and that you are educating me, and that you will do the right thing when the time is needed. Each and every one of you, extremely impressed I have been, and I don't get impressed very easily. So, I want to thank you. And one area that I want to clarify is that, and madam, your suffering does not go unheard. Many mothers like you are around. They should be here as well. The charter schools do not submit to the rigorous regulations of public schools. Right there and then, they are on a higher plateau. They're untouchables. When we classify them as untouchables to educate the public, maybe they can understand. We have to rethink the language that we try to educate parents on, because parents are very ignorant, I'm sorry. They do not understand the dichotomy. So therefore, I urge every single one of us to start using the right terminology, very simply, in ABC, so that we can then start educating more and more parents. I tell you what, once we conquer the parent factory, we're it. But we gotta get there, it's really tough. So if we explain to them that charter schools do not abide by are not held to the standards, the high rigorous standards of accountability like the public school system, then they can immediately understand, wait a minute, why is that? And the gentleman here said they cannot have elections. Well, that tells us a lot.
And I want to be very honest with you. It came about not only because of the law that was passed, but historically, public education has failed students of color. And we can go back to 1860 when they started segregating separate schools, separate classes, and it wasn't until 1920 that they started, that finally we saw some discrimination ending, but really in California, it wasn't until 1947 with the Mendes decision that segregation was finally outlawed, but then LA Unified starts de facto segregation, and there's another lawsuit in 1963, and that thing lasts till about 1982, to now they have this integration plan and permits to, for transportation and magnet schools and all that. So, be clear, public education failed, they failed, okay? Even though the public schools came about through Horace Mann and John Sweat here, he was a pioneer for public schools here in California, and John Sweat also was the one that established public schools. He was a Horace Mann of the public schools, but even with John Sweat, they still segregated students of color, and as far as the Latinos or Mexicans, we were not part of any of those laws, but because the legislators felt we were Indian, they segregated us, and like I said, it was until Mendes and then the Crawford decision. So
my concern is that most of us here are trying to say, yeah, let's hold them accountable, and we're going to hold them to the Brown Act and all these different acts. And my concern is that we're trying to do this through piecemeal legislation. I think we have to go big. I really do. I think we have to stop fucking around, messing around. We have to go big. We have to go to the level of perhaps like a Chanda Smith consent decree, where the gentleman from the NAACP was saying that there are many violations that are being had that are not protecting public school students and their right to a quality education. Now they're running the show and we're not protecting the interests of public school students. So I think a national Chanda Smith type consent decree that oversees making sure that students' rights in public education are protected. Another example would be similar to what happened in the Supreme Court with regard to public housing. The court found that the state of Texas was distributing public housing in a disparate way. And I think public education in the United States and California, all over the place, that's exactly what's happening. That it's creating chaos in every community, and it's easy to prove. So using the Supreme Court decision with regard to public housing, using that and replicating that basic argument of saying that charter schools are creating and have created a disparate impact in our communities.
Building, and nobody was there, and they were laying people off, and they had these things. So they didn't want me doing that, so they sent me home to be in my house. And I wondered if they could send me home, why didn't they send everybody else home?
Right.
It's a game, and one of the things that I would like to hear more of, instead of being the historians of these jive fill in the rest, I'd like to hear, what are you going to do that they can't ignore with impunity? There's a guy, a friend of mine who I've never met him in person, but we've talked extensively. His name is Brian Crowell. He brought an action against Berkeley Unified School District. There are violations of penal code sections that are taking place, and nobody, look at Penal Code 132, 134, 135, when they suppress information, when they violate civil rights, to be their historians and say, oh, they did this and they did that. Charter schools charge 2 and 3 times market value for every good and service they buy. And no one is taking them to court. And it's not an accident that Kamala Harris became senator from the state. She did nothing to stop this. We are 63 years after Brown versus Board of Education. We have a school district that is over 90% black and Latino. There is no Socratic method in the rote education these kids are being given, and nobody does anything about it. What I would suggest, and just if you give me one more time, to take a page from Dr. King. In Selma, when black people were forced to go to the back of the bus, it occurred to him that there's no way that you can run a system of, in that case, transportation, where 70% of the ridership is of an ethnicity that is being discriminated against. If we boycott public education, if you have teachers that have been targeted for the sole crime of being at the top of the salary scale, and if you take those teachers and go to the black churches and go to other public buildings, Latino churches, and say to the parents, your kids aren't going to be out on the street, they're going to be educated in this building. Regular teachers show up, so they have to be paid. All of a sudden, you're doing something that's got their attention because they're not getting ADA money. And that's what it's all about. They don't give a damn about your kids. So what I'm looking for is somebody who's willing to be proactive and not be the historian of people who know damn well what they're doing. They increased the administrative staff by 20%. They save $60,000 for every teacher they target. If you are successful as an educator, you're making them look bad. I filed a whistleblower complaint that they were graduating and giving diplomas to kids with 2nd and 3rd grade reading abilities. It's proven by the fact that 70% of the kids that go to the community college can't take regular courses, they're taking remedial. The black graduation rate at Santa Monica College is 3%. You have Latino children who are, if you look at any study, bilingual brains process information faster than monolingual brains, but these kids aren't doing well. They're being set up. And I'm sorry if this is on tape, what part of fuck you don't you people understand? When charters first came out, they were seen as a proving ground. They were never defined as standalone, that they're going to become regular schools. They were seen as a proving ground to have everything positive that they did melded into the regular public school system. What you have now, what we call charters, is a hustle. It's a hustle where the leading Stanford study shows that and it's never sees the light of day in the mainstream media, which is something people in this room need to understand. How many stories about public education do you know that KPCC will not report because, as Sharon McNary said to me, Mr. Eisenberg, we get 56% of our budget from Broad, Gates, Walton, and the Koch brothers. And we're not going to bite the hand that feeds us. The same Broad paid for coalition that put John Deasy in power also paid to have the leadership of UTLA bought off so that you have the head of the head of AFT, Randy Weingarten. She was an attorney. She worked for 6 months as a substitute teacher. She gets $450,000 a year to sell out the collective bargaining agreement. It's not just targeting teachers at the top of the salary scale, 93%. It's a statistical impossibility. 93% of the teachers they're getting rid of are at the top of the salary scale or fired. I was fired less than 100 days before vesting in lifetime health benefits. Why? It's about money. That's all it's about, and we are glorifying it here by being their historians. I'm interested in doing something to stop them, and until shown otherwise, my attorney and I call it the Fiji option. If we move up through federal court, 9th District, if it goes and they rubber stamp this in the court system, then it's time to move to Fiji. But what I find astounding is I even have an attorney now, a guy named Michael Kelly, who is willing to take on cases of age discrimination. That's what it is. But people talk, and when push comes to shove, they do, with the exception of Brian Crowell and the NAACP in Berkeley, Oakland. Why there? LAUSD has $500 million. They have the taxpayer, and no attorneys want to go up against them and be bled dry. What I came to this meeting for today is not to do another post-mortem of how we have systematically, if we have special needs children, they get an IEP, they hire somebody to come in on the IEP, and they spend 1 hour dealing with 5 children, and they build the system 5 times. They build a charter school in South Central. Well, the charter school is a nonprofit, but the corporation that owns it isn't a nonprofit. Right. And the cost of the budget of that charter school, building that charter school, is 2 to 3 times market value. They build the Belmont site, and then the ex-mayor of this city, we've got O'Melveny and Myers, the oldest crooked law firm in California, going after, you had LAUSD being represented by the same attorneys that represented the developer, and they built a school on a toxic waste dump. But when O'Melveny and Myers said, well, can we get Mayor Reardon to come in? Mayor Reardon said, prima facie case, yes, you had a duty, you breached the duty, it was a cause of action. But if we put a bunch of Latino children that won't get cancer for 20 years on that site, then there's no damages. What part of fuck you don't you people get? When do we propose doing something? My students are dying. There are 1 million black people in jail. If you look at 13th by Ava DuVernay, they're paying $1 a day. It's a legal form of slavery. 63 years after Brown versus Board of Education. Talk to me about something that they can't ignore with impunity. And as I said before, that's what Dr. King talked about. He said, there's no way you're going to make black people go to the back of the bus if 70% of the ridership of that bus system. You need to bankrupt these people. You need to, everybody here is all agreed, it's about money. Take the profit away. You have black churches where people, I've been to a bunch of meetings and everybody's really nice and stuff. What are black churches about? They're about standing up in 2017 and giving a place for the community to send kids where those kids will get an education. But if you educate black folks, you got to give up all your racial stereotypes. And the purpose of public education today is to educate black and brown children to fulfill negative stereotypes. They come out of school without basic socialization, basic knowledge. Where's the industrial arts program? I paid for college because I have journeyman level skills from LAUSD in automotive, welding. I can take a kid and train him to be a welder for $40,000 a year starting salary. There's a critical shortage. But we're not doing it. Why aren't we doing it? Because if you educate black people, you got to look at 400 years of incredibly shitty history. And if you educate Latinos, you lose your cheap labor force.
Delegate to the NEA Representative Assembly. The statement of the NEA's position here has been exaggerated. To say the NEA still blanket supports charter schools is no longer the case. At the Representative Assembly this summer, they adopted a new policy regarding charter schools. And yes, it still supports certain forms of charter schools. Charter schools that are as transparent as traditional public schools, that have local governance like local public schools, and that are not causing the financial demise of local public schools. Other than that, yes, they are backing the NAACP call for a moratorium on charter schools. When it comes to a moratorium, though, what we need is not action from CTA and from AFT. What we need is action at the ground level. It's not until we can walk up to the new governor of California in 2019 with a stack of moratorium resolutions from local school boards, from local teachers associations, from local groups, and say, look, the people of the state of California are fed up and we need a statewide moratorium that anything is going to happen. This needs to be a grassroots movement. And that's how to do it. Go to the local school boards. I know LA school board will not support a call for a moratorium like that. Anaheim Union High School District already has. And it's time for that to be pushed statewide so that we can get the state to stop rubber stamping, and that's what they do, to stop rubber stamping the applications for charters, and to get the county boards to stop rubber stamping and leave it to local control where it belongs.
Did any of the students write positive letters? Yes, they did. What did you do with those letters? I destroyed them. Why? Because they didn't go to the charges against him. This is criminal. Do you guys understand? What are you proposing to stop overt criminal activity? I lose my job, I'll rent out some rooms in my house. My students are dying. We are 63 years after Brown, and we are in a segregated society, and we're having a history lesson of how I got fucked by LAUSD. How long do we have this? We can subtle nuance. I can top every speaker here on every subject they talked about. Show me the money. Where's the change? Oh, by the way, last thing, and then I'll let you go. I got educated by LAUSD. I came out with journeyman level skills. I have a credential to teach industrial arts. They've closed it down because everybody's going to college. When you get this 40% of is the total capacity of all colleges in the United States. Right. But you get the now superintendent, Michelle, who only got the job because the one qualification to be superintendent is you got to show the entrenched bureaucracy that you will do nothing to change the present reality. And she comes out with a statement, we're going to have 100% graduation with a 52% documented chronic truancy rate. And no one in the press will report it because their ass is owned by Broad, Gates, Walton, and the Kochs. How do you face that short of, I'm not into terrorism, but I understand it.
I'm Michael Dominguez. I spent 24.8 years teaching in LA Unified and was forcibly retired. A couple of points. In terms of what Sada brought up, the different that people want something better from the public schools. It's very easy to blame the public schools, but the public schools are always dependent upon the amount of money they get. Now, I grew up here in LA. I grew up in a working class neighborhood, and I thought we were middle class until I grew up. I went to Lusinger High School. In my graduating class, I was the only one that was accepted to a top tier university. I went to Pomona College. No one had ever heard of Pomona College. I grew up in Hawthorne. I'd never heard of Pomona College. But they came and they recruited, and I applied, and I went there, and I graduated. Pomona College is highly regarded. Now, when I went there, I went to school with people who didn't grow up in a place like Hawthorne, who didn't go to a public school like Lusinger High School. And I immediately heard how it was different. I encountered people who had gone to Beverly Hills High School, Hillsborough High School, up by San Francisco, and many other wealthy neighborhoods. And the first thing that struck me is that they had many more things to choose from. In my high school, here's just one specific example. We had 1 year of biology offered. That was it. And if you were planning on going to college, you took that 1 year of biology. But my friends and classmates who had gone to Hillsborough and other places had 2 years offered. There is one absolute answer that will make any school better, and that is lower class size. Charter schools don't offer lower class size.
Yes, they do.
Well, they say they do, but, well, you bring up a good point, because we don't have the data. The charter schools on the east side, the charter schools in South LA don't really have smaller classes. And I know people who have worked there, and they say, yeah, we have the same 30 kids in the classroom. What are they doing with the extra money? That's a big savings. They pay themselves. They don't always pay the teachers more. Some charter schools do pay their teachers more, and they are able to buy loyalty. El Camino Real High School had a big scandal recently. The principal was diverting funds for a side gig, which was recruiting basketball players. Well, so many of his faculty showed up to school board meetings talking about how wonderful he is. Then I found out they get $20,000 more per year. I've never been in that situation. No one's ever asked to purchase my loyalty. One more thing. In terms of the question, what's happening from here? Will it get worse? I think it will. The money, you mentioned Brown versus Board of Education. Since that time, there's been a rise in right-wing politics within the United States, and it's incremental. It's been creeping up. We never heard about the Koch brothers when I was a child, because they weren't prominent. But now Walmart, Bill Gates, etc., have a lot of money, and they're throwing it around. Here's one way they throw it around. CTA, I mentioned earlier, after being told, well, we don't take money from Gates anymore, the Teachers Institute for Teaching is run only by the money we collect from dues-paying members here in California. Well, that was true as far as it went, but it changed. Now there's another foundation called California's Defending Education. Notice if you teach, CDE are the abbreviation for California Department of Education, so it's something familiar to teachers. They get their money from they're slopped at the same trough. They get the money to run that from the same privatizers, and it is run, well, Eric Hines, the current president of CTA, sits on the board. And if you go to their website, it's really quite interesting because you hear the same buzzwords about building capacity and best practices. And the one that gets me is labor management cooperation, which, if you're a teacher, this labor management cooperation, you realize, is only getting teachers to do what management wants without the interference of unionism. It's still underway. Oh, it's a lot of money. The previous foundation paid Mr. Hines about over $200,000 to sit on their board per year. That's more money than any teacher would ever make. The current foundation, I'm not sure how much any of the officers are paid, but, and this includes CFT too. I don't want to leave them out. But you have to realize, they can't be doing it for less. I'm sure they're asking for that much money or more. If you get that kind of money, you're not going to turn around and bite the hand that feeds you.